Hi, I'm Arden. My sister sold my dog without telling me, then laughed and said, he was just a pet. But I have the footage. I watched her walk him out of my house like he meant nothing, and that was just the beginning. What do you do when your family keeps rewriting the rules, one quiet betrayal at a time? When you're always the one asked to forgive, to forget, to make peace, even as they erase you from photos, from memories, from your own life? I didn't think I'd fight back, but then I did, and now I'm wondering, what else were they willing to take if I'd stayed silent? The first thing I noticed when I stepped inside was the silence. Not the peaceful kind you welcome after a long day, but the cold, echoing kind that presses against your ears. Kip always greeted me at the door, tail wagging, paws tapping, eyes full of concern like I'd been gone for years. But today, nothing. The leash still hung by the front door, unmoved. The air was too still, like the house itself was holding its breath. I set my work bag down on the counter, slowly, deliberately. Something was off. The floor gleamed. Counters sparkled. Vera had never cleaned like this, not once, unless she was expecting company. But it wasn't just the spotless surfaces. Kip's food bowl in the corner was empty, and not in the usual way. No drool, no signs he'd eaten. His water dish had been dried out so long, the ring at the bottom had faded. I walked through the house, calling his name softly. Kip? Buddy? Nothing, not even a rustle. His bed was gone too, completely gone, like it had never existed. I checked the garage, the backyard, the gate. Everything in its place. Everything but Kip. My stomach twisted. I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to my mom. Hey, did you or Vera take Kip somewhere? No reply. I waited 5 minutes, pacing, rereading the text. Still nothing. The house creaked as I moved through it, my footsteps sounding too loud, my breathing louder still. And then I found her. Vera was in the kitchen, standing at the island with a knife in one hand and a red apple in the other, slicing casually like she was the star of a cooking show. Her expression didn't change when she saw me. "Where's Kip?" I asked, barely keeping my voice level. She looked up, then down at her apple and said, "Oh, I gave him away." My brain stopped for a second. "You what?" "He's gone. Don't worry about it." She shrugged and took a bite. "He was just a dog." It took me a full second to absorb the words. Vera, are you out of your mind? You gave away my dog without telling me?" She rolled her eyes like I was the one being unreasonable. "I needed the place clean. You're always so attached to things." I felt something snap inside me, not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet shift, like a floorboard giving way. My voice trembled, but not with fear, with restraint. "You had no right." "You're overreacting," she said, turning her back. "Seriously, he was old. You work too much. He needed attention. I did you a favor." I left the kitchen before I said something I couldn't take back. My hands shook as I climbed the stairs to my room, the kind of tremble that comes from your body realizing before your mind that something's changed forever. I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it. The house still smelled faintly of Kip's shampoo, that soft scent of oatmeal and cedar that lingered after baths. I looked over at the dresser. His collar sat there, right where I'd left it the night before I went out of town. I walked over, picked it up, ran my fingers along the worn leather. I remembered the first day I brought him home, how he refused to sleep unless he was curled against my side. Kip wasn't just a dog. He was the first thing in my life I chose purely for me. My thumb brushed the name tag. "Kip," I whispered, to no one. I pulled out my phone again. No message from Mom. I tried calling her, straight to voicemail. Vera's laughter echoed faintly through the floor. That sound, so detached, so dismissive, felt like a slap. I couldn't cry. I wouldn't. That's what Vera always expected. Arden, the soft one. Arden, the overfeeler. But not this time. I sat on the edge of my bed and forced myself to stay still, to breathe, to think. Night fell slowly, painting the room in long shadows. I turned on the lamp and walked down to the kitchen. The house felt colder than usual. The table was empty, spotless. I took Kip's bowl from the shelf, set it on the floor, and sat in front of it. No noise, no pause rushing over, just silence. I wrapped my arms around my knees and stared at the bowl. I wasn't angry yet. That would come later. Right now, I was something else, numb. But it wasn't just the dog that vanished that day. It was the last piece of peace I had left in that house. After a restless night, I tried to get through the next day without spiraling. I poured myself a cup of black coffee and sat on the porch for a while, letting the morning fog settle over my skin. I watched a squirrel dart across the fence and thought, absurdly, that Kip would have barked at it just to make me laugh. Instead, there was only silence and the tightening weight in my chest that I tried to hide even from myself. Around 5:30 that evening, my mom called out from the kitchen. "Dinner's at 6. You're joining us, Arden." It wasn't a question. It never was. I changed into something decent, tied my hair back, and forced myself downstairs. Vera was already at the table, glass of white wine in hand, scrolling her phone like none of this had happened. She looked up at me briefly, smiled, polite, performative, and returned to her screen. I sat down slowly, stiffly, at my usual spot. The chair creaked under me like it knew I didn't want to be there. Mom brought over a casserole dish and set it down like it was Sunday dinner, not the aftermath of a betrayal. The table was too perfect. The napkins folded, silverware aligned like we were pretending to be some kind of family from a holiday card. We started eating in awkward silence, and I tried to hold it in, but I couldn't pretend anymore, not with the bowl still missing from its corner, not with Kip's absence ringing louder than Vera's laughter. "So," I began, keeping my tone neutral, "is no one going to talk about what happened yesterday?" Vera didn't look up. "Still on about that?" "I'm on about my dog," I said, a little sharper. "You gave him away without telling me." She sighed like I'd accused her of stealing a parking spot. "I told you. He needed more than you were giving him. I found him a good home." "You're welcome." Mom laid her fork down gently, as if that could soften what came next. "Let's not ruin dinner, Arden. Please." I turned to her, stunned. "Ruin dinner?" "You're always so sensitive," she said. "It's been a hard year." Maybe Vera thought she was helping. Helping. That word nearly made me laugh. Instead, I pushed my chair back an inch. Helping would have meant asking me. Helping would have meant respecting that he was mine. "He was a pet," Vera said between sips. "Don't act like you lost a child." That cut. And it wasn't just what she said. It was how casual it was, how practiced. Like she'd been preparing that line for days. I opened my mouth to respond, but then she chuckled. "You know, the way you used to talk to him, honestly, you treated him more like a boyfriend than a dog. You'd cuddle him every night like a child. Maybe this was overdue." My chest tightened, my hand curled under the table. Mom didn't say anything. She looked at her plate. Vera laughed again, smug, waiting for me to explode. But I didn't. I stood up, quietly, placed my napkin down, and said nothing. My feet carried me out of the dining room before my voice could betray the emotions building in my throat. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. I walked out into the hallway, and that's when I noticed it. The shelf, the one we all used to pass by 100 times a day, looked different. I paused. The familiar frame that once held a photo of me, Vera, and Kip on the front lawn during one of the few summer days we weren't arguing. It was gone. In its place sat a new frame. This one was shinier, larger. Inside it, Mom and Vera standing outside City Hall, dressed up for some local award ceremony. They were smiling. They looked happy. I wasn't in the photo. I wasn't even mentioned in the card underneath, handwritten in neat script, to the best daughter a mom could ask for. I don't know how long I stood there. Seconds? Minutes? All I knew was it felt intentional, not careless, not absent-minded. This was a revision of history, a clean swap. I hadn't just lost Kip. I'd been replaced in more ways than one. I walked back to my room slowly, knees heavy, mind spinning. I closed the door and leaned against it, my hands trembling, not with rage, but something colder, something like realization. They weren't sorry. They didn't see anything wrong, and maybe they never had. Maybe Kip wasn't the first thing she erased from this house. I stayed in my room the entire next morning. I wasn't avoiding anyone. I just didn't feel like sharing oxygen with people who could laugh while I bled in front of them. Around mid-afternoon, I pulled on an old sweatshirt and started cleaning. Not because the room needed it, but because I needed to move. Do something with my hands, with the static swirling in my head. As I was pushing a box of winter clothes under the bed, my hand brushed against something soft and worn. I pulled it out slowly. Kip's old chew toy, the one shaped like a squeaky hamburger. The stuffing had long since thinned out, but he'd refused to let me throw it away. Even when I brought him newer toys, he'd always dig this one back out. I sat down cross-legged on the carpet, turning the toy in my hands, and my mind drifted back, 5 years ago, almost to the day. It was a Tuesday then, too. I'd just lost my job at the nonprofit. My boyfriend had left a week before, citing the usual reasons. I was too heavy emotionally, not enough fun, and too focused on work. I had nothing left in me, and I remember walking past the animal shelter just looking for a distraction. I didn't expect to find salvation. The shelter was dimly lit, and the staff barely looked up when I walked in. But in the back cage, there was this scruffy, wide-eyed mess of a dog who locked eyes with me like he already knew me. Kip. He wasn't pretty. His left ear stood up while the right drooped, and his coat had patches missing from stress. But when I knelt down, he pressed his face against the bars like he was apologizing for being unwanted. I brought him home that same day. Vera laughed the moment she saw him. "You really picked that mutt?" she said, wrinkling her nose. "Looks like someone dragged a mop through the mud." But I didn't care. Kip was mine. The first thing I'd chosen completely for myself. Back in the present, I stood and walked out to the backyard with the toy still in hand. The late afternoon sun was starting to slant against the fence, painting the grass gold. I sat down on the step, knees pulled to my chest, toy in my lap. There was a patch of dirt in the far corner where Kip used to dig, no matter how many times I told him not to. It was still bare. I sat there a long time, until the air started to cool and the shadows stretched longer, until I couldn't hold it in anymore. Later that night, after dinner had been skipped in silence, I heard my mom doing dishes. I walked into the kitchen, clutching the toy, and waited until she turned off the faucet. "Can we talk?" I asked. She wiped her hands on a towel, then nodded slowly. "Sure, honey." We sat at the breakfast table, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. "I know you think I'm being dramatic," I began. "But Kip, he wasn't just a pet. He got me through a lot. Losing him like that, it wasn't just about the dog. It was about not being asked. Again." Mom looked at me with that practiced softness she used when I was 10 and crying over forgotten birthday invitations. "I'm not saying it was the right way," she said carefully. "But your sister, she meant well. She always has. She's just stronger in certain ways. You feel things deeper." It wasn't meant to hurt, but it did. "I'm tired of being the sensitive one, Mom," I said. "You say it like it's a flaw, like it justifies people walking all over me." She didn't respond, just folded the towel neatly on the table, eyes down. I pushed a little further. "When I was a kid, you gave my bike to Vera because she had longer legs. I practiced for weeks. That pink bike was mine." Mom's face tightened. "And high school?" I went on. "I didn't get a graduation party because Vera got engaged the same weekend. No one even told me until the decorations were already up for her." "That was a complicated time," she whispered. "No, it was the same pattern, over and over. And Kip, he was the one thing no one else could take, until she did." There was nothing left to say. I stood up and walked to the doorway, then turned back. "I just want you to know," I said, "I'm done being the one who always has to understand. I'm done being erased." I went to bed early, but I didn't sleep. I laid there in the dark, thinking about every little thing I'd let slide because I wanted peace. Every birthday overshadowed, every apology I gave just to keep things from exploding. And I thought about Kip, how he'd always nuzzle into my side when he sensed I was close to breaking. Maybe Kip wasn't the first thing she erased from this house, but he'd damn well be the last. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind paced more than my body ever could. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Kip's face, confused, trusting, waiting at the door for someone who'd already decided he didn't belong anymore. Around 2 a.m., I gave up on sleep and got out of bed. I remembered the pet camera. It had been an afterthought when I bought it a few years ago, one of those impulse purchases during a sale, meant to ease my guilt about long work hours. I hadn't used it in months, but maybe it had picked up something. Anything. The camera had been mounted above the bookshelf in the living room, near the corner by the window. I got a step stool, unscrewed the mount, and took it back to my room. The device still had a micro SD card inside. My laptop took a moment to recognize the drive. The folder labeled REC popped up, filled with time-stamped video clips. My fingers trembled as I clicked the most recent folder. The footage loaded slowly. There was Kip, lying on his usual spot by the rug, tail thumping lazily. Vera entered the frame a few moments later, phone pressed to her ear, pacing like she owned the air in the room. I turned up the volume. "Yeah," she was saying. "She's out until Tuesday night. I'm just going to do it now." Pause. "No, she won't know. Arden's clueless. She'll probably think he ran off or something. He's dumb enough." I froze. Vera crouched near Kip, called his name in that fake sweet voice she used whenever someone was watching. He trotted over, tongue out, happy as ever. She clipped on his leash like it was a casual afternoon walk. Then came the part that broke me. Before walking out, she said into the phone, "Clean space, clean start. I'll just tell her it was time." Kip looked up at her, tail wagging like he trusted every word out of her mouth. I closed the laptop, but the image stayed. His tail never stopped wagging, not even when she walked him out of my life. I didn't cry, not right away. What I felt was something colder, something sharper than tears. It was betrayal, measured and precise. The next morning, I called every vet and boarding facility within 10 miles. I knew Vera wouldn't go far. She'd want convenience. I pretended to be her, practiced her clipped tone. Most places had nothing. Then one receptionist hesitated. "Vera Lane?" the woman repeated. Oh, yes. We had a check-in for a retriever mix. The dog was transferred to a private owner. Let me see. Yes, the contact was Elliot Pierce. Elliot. I didn't know the name. Yet, I Googled it. Fast. It didn't take long to find him. Real estate investor. Local Sacramento features. A man who wore crisp suits and posted motivational quotes under selfies. Hustle hard and trim the dead weight. One of those. Then I found Vera's post, brand new, captioned, New beginnings, clean spaces. In the background of the glossy kitchen counter and quartz-tiled backsplash, there he was, Kip, half hidden behind a kitchen island. His ears were still uneven, his eyes still that same shade of worry brown. My stomach turned. She hadn't given him away to someone in need. She traded my dog for a better shot at impressing a man who probably thought pets were messy and love was optional. She handed off my best friend like he was clutter, like he didn't matter. I stared at the screen, rereading that post again and again. New beginnings, clean spaces. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the laptop across the room, but instead, I clicked save. I downloaded the image, I filed away the video. I started a new folder on my desktop, evidence. My hands steadied, my breath came slower, because now I knew. She didn't just get rid of Kip, she traded him for status. The sound of the door closing behind me was the only thing I allowed myself. No slam, no scene, just the unmistakable echo of finality. It was early evening, the sun just beginning to dip behind the treetops outside the kitchen window. I walked down the hall with Kip's leash clip still clenched in my fist, cold metal pressing into my palm. I didn't go to my room right away. I needed air, even if it came from the back porch that always smelled faintly of old mulch and overripe lemons. I sat for a moment, letting the quiet wrap around me. Not like comfort, but like armor. My thoughts were still circling the same orbit, but now they had weight, proof. Later that night, when the house had mostly settled, I grabbed my laptop and started digging. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for. Maybe more lies, maybe just something that told me I wasn't crazy. I clicked through old text backups synced to my cloud account and found a group chat I hadn't opened in months. It was a thread with Vera and a few of her friends from her PR job. I scrolled through messages full of eye-roll emojis, wine memes, and snarky gossip until I found it. If Elliot doesn't like the dog, Vera had written, I'll just get rid of it. Arden's too fragile to stop me anyway. I froze. Not sensitive, not emotional, fragile, like I was a china doll too delicate to stand up for herself. The irony made me laugh once, short, bitter, fragile. She always used that word like it was a fact written on my birth certificate, and now she'd broadcast it like some inside joke. I stared at the message until the words blurred, then copied it. I added it to a folder I'd created earlier that day called Truth. Inside were the pet cam screenshots, the Instagram photo, and now this. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Something inside me had shifted. No more wondering what to do. No more asking for fairness from people who specialized in erasing me. After a shower, I printed every piece of evidence, color pages, 3-hole punched, clipped neatly. I placed them in a slim binder with a clear plastic cover. Not dramatic, just organized, just unignorable. When I walked into the kitchen that evening, Mom was chopping vegetables for stir-fry. Vera sat at the island with her feet up on the bar stool, scrolling her phone like a teenager instead of a 37-year-old woman who'd just stolen my dog. I didn't speak. I didn't look at either of them. I walked to the dining table, placed the binder right in the center, and pulled out a chair, sat down, waited. Vera glanced up first. "What's with the school project?" I didn't answer. Mom turned from the counter, wiped her hands on a dish towel, and approached the table. She picked up the binder, opened the first page. It was the message, the one calling me fragile. Then the screenshot of Kip on camera, trusting her as she leashed him. Then the Instagram photo with Kip half hidden in a stranger's kitchen. Then the receipt from the vet clinic under Vera's name, authorizing a release to Elliot Pierce. Her hands started to shake by the time she reached the last page. "What? What is this?" she whispered. Vera, still acting unfazed, stood and leaned over Mom's shoulder. "Oh, come on. This is ridiculous. You're making it seem like I sold your child to the black market." I looked up at her, steady. "One more lie," I said evenly, "and I'll stop protecting what's left of your image." That got her attention. Her smirk faltered. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, standing, "you've gotten away with a lot in this house, but not this. You're not going to walk around pretending like you're the victim here. You lied. You manipulated. And you didn't care what it cost anyone but you." I turned to Mom. Her eyes were wide, her mouth partially open. She wasn't defending anyone. Not yet. I placed Kip's leash clip gently on the table, next to the binder. "That's the only thing I have left of him," I said. "And I'm not asking anymore. I'm acting." Then I walked out. I didn't slam the door because I wanted her to hear what silence sounded like when it came from me. The morning after I left that binder on the table, I drove across town without touching the radio once. The silence in my car felt cleaner than the one I'd left behind. Intentional, necessary. It was a Wednesday, just cool enough to keep the windows cracked, the kind of day when the light hits everything just a little too honestly. I'd made an appointment the night before with an animal law group. Small office, 5 stars on Yelp, 1 attorney and a paralegal. But I didn't care about prestige. I just needed someone who would say, "You're not crazy. This matters." The office was in a converted house tucked between a chiropractor and a bike shop. A wooden sign above the door read, "Paw Justice." Inside, it smelled like lemon-scented cleaner and printer toner. A woman named Laurel greeted me, calm and warm in that way that made me feel like she'd seen worse. I handed her the binder. "Take your time," I said, "but it's all in there." She flipped through page by page, didn't rush, didn't frown, just nodded occasionally and scribbled a note in the margin with a purple pen. Then she looked up at me and said the first thing that made my chest loosen in days. "This is theft," she said plainly. "Fraud, actually. And if Kip's microchipped under your name, you're the legal owner." I nodded slowly, swallowing hard. "No, he is. I have the paperwork. I have all of it." Laurel reached into a drawer, pulled out a thin form with a yellow header. "We'll start with a cease and desist. We'll give her 72 hours to return the dog. If she doesn't respond, we escalate." She looked me square in the eyes. I've seen people get away with worse, but not when the victim's this prepared. I signed where she told me to, left with a folder in one hand and a different weight in the other. Not grief, not rage, something steadier, something close to control. Back home, I passed Vera in the hallway. She didn't speak. Neither did I. But I noticed the corner of her mouth twitch when she saw the envelope under my arm. Good. Let her wonder. The email went out that afternoon. Laurel also sent a hard copy by courier, signature required. I watched the tracking number update in real time. Delivered, 4:18 p.m. For the first time in days, I breathed like I meant it. That evening, I was brushing my teeth when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then opened the message. "Hey, Dana here, Dana Shields, from undergrad. I saw Vera's post and, well, I just wanted to say I'm sorry." I sat down on the edge of the tub, toothbrush still in hand. I remember when you got Kip. You were heartbroken, and he was your light. You saved each other. I don't know the full story now, but I believe you. I always did. Tears came easy then, not because I was sad, but because I finally felt seen. Dana wasn't family. She hadn't lived in our house of subtle dismissals and polite punishments, but she remembered who I was before I started shrinking myself for peace. I typed back slowly, thumb shaking a little. Thank you. That means more than I can say. The message sat there on the screen, glowing soft in the dim bathroom light. It wasn't just support, it was memory. A person remembering the version of me that even I'd forgotten. And that's when I realized I hadn't just let Vera take Kip. I'd let them all chip away at me for years, made excuses, shrugged off insults, smiled through dismissals. Not anymore. The next morning, I set the folder on the kitchen counter. Mom was pouring coffee. Vera, across the room, looked like she hadn't slept. Her phone buzzed. She checked the screen and froze. Must have been the lawyer's number. I didn't say a word. Just poured myself a glass of water and left the room. Because power only matters when the other side still thinks you're powerless. I woke up the next morning before the alarm had a chance to buzz. There was a strange stillness in the house, like the kind that settles after a long argument when no one dares speak too loud. I stayed in bed for a few minutes, staring at the ceiling, the corners of my room still dim in the early light. At 8:07 a.m., I reached for my phone and opened Instagram. By 8:32, the post was live. It wasn't anything elaborate, just a 3-slide story. No voiceover, no hashtags, just facts. Slide 1. A still image from the pet cam video. Vera, in jeans and a blazer, Kip's leash in her hand, opening the front door. Kip's body half out of frame, his tail mid-wag. Slide 2. The text message where she called me too fragile to stop her. Bolded and underlined, no extra commentary. Slide 3. A plain white background with black text. You don't get to take what's not yours, especially not family. I put the phone down, let the words settle, let the house breathe. By 9:20, it had over 2,400 views. By 10:11, comments started rolling in. Wait, this is awful. She did what? If this happened to me, I'd sue. I didn't respond to any of them. I just watched. At 11:43, I heard Vera's door slam. Hard. She stomped into the kitchen, phone to her ear, hissing into the speaker. I don't know what she thinks she's doing, but it's not going to work. No, I'm not taking it down. This is slander. She's twisting everything. I can't believe this. She noticed me standing by the stairs. You think this makes you look strong? She snapped, holding up her phone. Posting stuff like some pathetic little martyr? You always need a stage. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. My phone buzzed again. The views had hit 14,000. By noon, she had posted her own rebuttal, a polished photo of her and Elliot smiling in what looked like a model home kitchen, captioned, "People will always try to tear you down when you're building something real. Let them talk." But the internet didn't fall for it. One comment read, "So building something real means stealing a dog from your sister?" Another added, "You pulled the same thing at the shelter drive last year. Remember how you dumped those 3 puppies because your shoes got muddy?" Others followed, a slow burn of truth bubbling up from people who'd stayed quiet too long. It was just past 2 p.m. when I got the call. The number wasn't saved, but it had a Sacramento area code. I picked up, stepping into my room and closing the door behind me. "Hi, is this Arden Keel?" a woman asked. Her voice was measured, professional. "Yes, who's calling?" "This is Maria Lopez from Paw Justice Coalition. We're a non-profit animal advocacy group, and one of our volunteers forwarded us your post. We've also received previous complaints tied to that household, and I wanted to let you know we're taking this seriously. I sat on the edge of my bed. My legs suddenly felt heavier. Maria continued, "The footage you shared, it's clear, and you have documentation on the dog's ownership. If you'd be open to it, we'd like to assist in escalating this, both legally and in terms of public awareness. If that's something you're comfortable with." I swallowed once, slowly. Yes, I'm very open to that. She didn't push, she didn't press, just said, "Good, we'll be in touch by tomorrow with next steps. And for what it's worth, you did the right thing." After the call, I placed the phone down and stared out the window for a long time. The backyard was quiet again, the grass where Kip used to dig untouched, like it was waiting. I wasn't alone in this anymore. Not just legally, not just online, but finally, I had people who saw it too. The pattern, the control, the way everything I'd cared about was turned into something convenient for someone else's narrative. This wasn't just about Kip anymore. It was about every time I was told to sit down and stay quiet. By Friday, the air in the house had changed. Not in the way it does with seasons, but in the way silence starts to feel heavy, like furniture that's been left too long in the same spot, collecting dust around its edges. I returned home that afternoon to grab a few boxes I had stored in the hall closet. I had no intention of staying long. I parked in the driveway instead of the garage, just in and out. That was the plan. As I stepped through the front door, I noticed it right away. The photo frame on the hallway table had been changed again. Not the shiny, oversized one of Vera and Mom in front of City Hall. That one was gone. In its place sat the old photo, worn at the corners, colors slightly faded from sunlight. It was the one we took years ago. Vera, me, and Kip in the front yard. Kip had his tongue out, ears askew. I was crouched beside him, arm around his chest. Vera stood stiffly behind us, hands on her hips, half smiling like she wasn't quite comfortable. I stopped in front of it. No note, no explanation. Just the picture, quietly returned to where it used to belong. As I stood there, my mother walked by, carrying a laundry basket. She paused for a moment beside me, but didn't look at the frame. She didn't speak either. She just walked past and disappeared into the laundry room. No apology, no tears, just presence. And somehow, that landed harder than if she'd broken down at my feet. I went upstairs, packed my things quickly. The hallway was quiet, except for the occasional hum of the washer. When I came down with a box in my arms, Vera was sitting in the living room, scrolling through her phone with one leg tucked under her. She didn't look up when I entered, but she knew I was there. "You happy now?" she said flatly. "You ruined everything." I set the box down gently near the front door. "I didn't ruin anything. I revealed it." "You humiliated me," she said, eyes still fixed on her screen. "Elliot won't return my calls. His assistant told me he's focusing on clarity and alignment right now, whatever that means." I didn't respond. I walked past her into the kitchen, picked up Kip's new collar from the hook near the pantry. It still had the tag I ordered last year. Kip Keel in engraved lettering. The K was a little crooked, an error from the online shop I never bothered to fix. "You think this makes you better?" Vera's voice rose. "Air our business like that? Publicly?" I turned to face her. Calm. It wasn't business, it was the truth. She stood, crossed the room in a few quick steps. "You had options. You could have talked to me. You didn't have to make me look like some what?" I interrupted. "Some woman who gave away her sister's dog to impress a man? Because that's what you did. You didn't lose Elliot because of me. You lost him because he saw what you're capable of." Her jaw tensed. "You always make things so dramatic." I stepped closer, met her eyes. No, I make things visible. You don't get to call that drama. She hesitated, lips parted like she had another line locked and loaded, but it never came. I want an apology, she said finally, voice tight. A real one. I laughed once, not unkindly, just exhausted. For what? Telling the truth? Showing people who you are? She held my gaze, like she was waiting for me to soften. But I didn't. Not this time. I never had a sister, I said. I had a rival wearing my last name. She blinked. That, apparently, cut deeper than anything I'd posted online. I walked to the door, picked up my box, and opened it with one hand. As I stepped out onto the porch, the late afternoon sun caught the edge of the screen door, casting a faint shadow across the floor. I turned once, briefly. Mom stood in the doorway behind me, laundry basket now empty, eyes on the floor. She didn't say anything, neither did I. But I think, for the first time in a very long time, she understood the silence wasn't meant to punish, it was meant to end something. I reached my car, placed the box in the back seat, and gently set Kip's collar on top. Tomorrow, I'd be picking him up from the temporary foster center that Pa Justice had arranged. Tomorrow, he'd come home. But today, I left behind the house, the stories, the history that had always made room for everyone else but me. Today, I didn't ask for space. I took it. Some things end quietly, others leave echoes you never forget. The sky was still dark when I woke up the next morning, not with dread or weight, but with a calm I hadn't felt in years. It was the kind of quiet that didn't make your chest tighten, but instead let you breathe a little deeper. I got dressed slowly, choosing the soft green sweater Kip always liked to nuzzle against. My new apartment still smelled faintly like fresh paint and cardboard. The living room had only a couch, a lamp, and a pile of half-opened boxes, but it was mine, uncomplicated. No one else's voice lived in these walls. By 8:00 a.m., I was pulling into the small lot behind the foster center. The building was modest, just a single story with a white fence and a sign out front painted by hand. Pa Justice, Foster's Rescues. Maria, the case coordinator who had called me days earlier, was waiting on the porch. She waved as I stepped out of the car. "He's ready," she said. "He's been waiting by the door since 7. I followed her inside, my heartbeat pacing ahead of me, and then there he was. Kip stood at the gate, tail going full speed, ears lopsided like always. When he saw me, he let out one of his small, questioning yelps, his "Is it really you?" bark. I didn't cry right away. I crouched down, opened my arms, and he pressed his whole body against my chest like he'd never left it. Only then did the tears come, but not from sadness. He licked my face, whined into my neck, and leaned his weight into me as if to say, "Finally." Later that morning, I took him straight to the park off Riverway. We used to come here every Saturday before life got messy. The eucalyptus trees lined the edge of the trail, and the breeze still smelled of pine needles and dust. I let Kip lead the way. His leash tugged gently in my hand, not pulling, just reminding me he was there. I let him sniff every patch of grass, greet every stranger, chase after squirrels he'd never catch. When we got back to the apartment, he curled up on the rug near the window and slept like it was the safest place on earth. Maybe it was. That night, after dinner, I sat down with my journal. I hadn't touched it in weeks. Too much had been happening to pause and reflect, but now, with Kip snoring at my feet, I picked up my pen. There was a voicemail from Mom I still hadn't responded to. I hadn't deleted it either. "I saw the video again," she'd said. "I should have protected you sooner. didn't know how. I replayed her words in my mind, then wrote in my journal, "Forgiveness isn't always about them. Sometimes it's the key that opens your own gate." The next weekend, I showed up at the local shelter, volunteer application in hand, Kip by my side. I figured I owed the world something better than silence. Maria greeted me with a smile and introduced me to the rest of the staff. "He seems like he's been through something," one of the volunteers said, kneeling to pet Kip. "But he's so well loved." I just smiled. I didn't correct her. I didn't explain. The story wasn't hers to hear, and it didn't need to be. Kip was home, not just physically, but in spirit. And I wasn't walking around with an apology stitched to my back anymore. In this new apartment, in this quieter life, I found something I hadn't realized I was looking for. A space where I didn't have to earn the right to exist. I no longer needed to make room for people who couldn't see my worth until it cost them something. Kip didn't just come home. He brought back the part of me they all tried to erase, and this time, I'm not giving it up. Sometimes, the real victory isn't getting back what was taken. It's realizing you never needed their permission to stand up for yourself. If you've ever been the quiet one, the overlooked one, the one asked to let it go just to keep the peace, maybe it's time to ask, what part of yourself have you been giving away to stay included? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And don't forget to subscribe if you want more true, raw, and deeply human stories like this one.